Hi, my name is Jessica Abawag, and I'm the owner and speech-language pathologist at Fluens Children's Therapy. We're a clinic that provides speech and occupational therapy for kids with locations in Tacoma, Washington, and Columbia, Tennessee. Today we're going to talk about why your child may struggle with certain speech sounds. The reality is, most people don't realize how complex the act of speaking is. And that's totally understandable because most times speaking and speech comes naturally to most people. So it's not something that you would intentionally think about. But if you've got a child who is struggling to produce certain speech sounds, it becomes really important for you to understand some of the challenges that they're facing because speech is such a complex system. There are a lot of muscles, parts of the body that go into it that need to be coordinated in order for a person to speak fluently. Oftentimes what we'll see with families, and unfortunately even some therapists, is that they're trying to get kids to pronounce and produce certain sounds just by hearing it alone. So you may see a parent or a therapist or an adult saying, say apple, say apple. That is only allowing the child to hear the word, get that auditory input, with the expectation of imitating it or producing it. And oftentimes that's not enough. If there's not something else going on cognitively or whatnot, then if that was enough for a child to start speaking, they already would. So what we do as speech therapists is to provide additional supports beyond just hearing the word. But in order for us to do that, we have to understand the parts of the body that go into producing speech. So today we're going to talk a little bit about it. This isn't a science lesson or an anatomy lesson, just a high overview so you can understand and maybe get a glimpse of what your child may be facing. And a breakdown in any of these areas could really cause your child to be having trouble producing the sound or the words accurately. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the brain. The brain is where so much goes on, obviously, but that's where the message is formed. Your child has an idea of what they want to say. Oftentimes what we'll see, especially in childhood apraxia of speech, is a child may have an understanding of what they want to say, but there's a breakdown in the nerves and the neurons from what they want to say to get their, what we call their articulators, which we'll get to in a second, or different parts of their body to produce that sound or word. Now, all of this typically happens in split seconds, but that is an area where we could see breakdown is in the brain. Another part is the lungs. Now, as speech therapists, this isn't something that we work on directly, but we might partner with a physical therapist or respiratory therapist to get that breath control. A child has to be able to breathe air in and make it come through the voice box, or also called the larynx, in order to get air and for speech to come out. So if there's a problem with lungs or breath support or breath control, again, speech therapists typically don't work on that directly, but we could partner with other professionals that do. Again, the voice box is the larynx part in your throat where vocal folds vibrate to make sound. There could be a breakdown there, and your child could need support with that. Speech therapists can work on this. If it requires surgical or medical intervention, they could partner with other professionals. The bulk of what we work on as speech therapists is called articulators. And as you can see, there are many things that go into this. Each articulator has to work to make a certain sound. So for instance, the tongue is one of the most important muscles when it comes to speech because it moves in lots of different ways and is responsible for making lots of different sounds. The other thing is the jaw. Before we get into that, let me just show you. The tongue needs to be able to elevate to make sounds like t, d, or l. It needs to be able to move in the middle to make sounds like or j. It needs to be able to retract. It needs to be able to do lots of different things. And the tongue is often what we work on with kids with lots of different sounds. The jaw is important because it needs to be stable and it needs to be able to move freely up and down to be able to connect sounds together. So a word like up, the jaw goes down first, up, and then closes. So as you can see, there's lots of things that go into producing speech. The teeth form a barrier for sounds like t, d, n, l, s. And those are important. So if a child has missing teeth, they may have trouble producing some of those sounds, or if their teeth are not aligned correctly, sometimes we see that causes issues. The alveolar ridge is this part right up here behind the teeth on the top of the palate, and that's often where we teach kids to put their tongue for certain sounds. Again, those t, d, Sometimes the sound is produced up there. The palate is this part on the top of your mouth. There's a hard palate and a soft palate the further it gets back, and different sounds are produced in different parts when the tongue hits the palate. The cheeks are responsible for producing sounds like ooh or oh, so a child needs to be able to move their cheeks appropriately and the muscles in those cheeks. The lips are important for sounds like and p and b. And again, these are all together called articulators. There's a lot that goes into it, but I just wanted to give you a glimpse of how complex speech actually is. And a breakdown in any of those areas is where kids could need support to pronounce their sounds correctly. So if you feel like your child is really struggling to pronounce words, or it's really hard to understand what they're saying, I encourage you to reach out and contact us to see how we can help support you.